Hello, everybody. Welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition. Good to have you with me this week. And let's see. There's a bunch of stuff I want to get to today. First, a really quick programming note. There are, of course, two versions of this show. There's a television edition, which you're watching right now, and there's also the live radio edition, which is Thursday nights at 9 p.m. You can get to it through IPMNation.com, but it also streams on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network, drkevinradionetwork.com. And I had a long conversation yesterday with Dr. Kevin of the Dr. Kevin Radio Network, and there's a new website coming. I can't say too much about it yet. But if you've been to drkevinradionetwork.com, of course, that's a great way to access all the programming that airs on that internet station. It's an internet talk station if you haven't been there. In addition to the two shows that I do the radio version of this show and also a show on Tuesday nights called The Matt Connarton Show. Those both air on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network. And there's also a lot of other cool programs, too, including Dr. Kevin's own show. And some of you may be familiar with Dr. Kevin. He's been on this show quite a few times, as well as on Norm and Friends over the years. Actually, that's how I originally met Dr. Kevin, was through Norm. So if you go to the website now, of course, you can find out what the different shows are that are on the site and who the hosts are, little bios of all the hosts on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network, and of course the live stream if you want to check out the programs, which I encourage you to do. But the website it's very basic. It's a functional site. You know, it's got the basic necessities on it, but there's a brand new site coming, I think, in the next week that's going to be launching that's going to be really, really cool. So just something to kind of keep in mind, and it's also going to have a much shorter domain name, so it'll be really easy to get to. So I won't say too much more about that, but if you've been to drkevinradionetwork.com and thought, well, it's, I can get to all the programming here and whatnot, but there's not much else to it. There's more coming, and I'm really excited about what's going to be on there. There's going to be archives of the shows and everything, so very cool stuff. So I wanted to mention that because I'm excited about it. There's also, I want to address this will probably be the final part in what we'll call the Gina trilogy. A couple weeks ago here on the show, as regular viewers know, I got into a bit of a verbal altercation with a caller named Gina. And it was at the end of the show a couple weeks ago. It was the day that it snowed on a Wednesday. We had quite the blizzard. And Gina, who apparently is a regular viewer of the show, does not usually get to see the show live because at the time that the show airs live, usually she is at work. So she usually catches the show on one of the replays. And by the way, if you don't know when the replays are for the show, if you go to ipmnation.com/MC Unleashed, all the times are there for when you can catch both this and the radio versions of the show. So Gina doesn't usually get to see the show live, but that day, because of the blizzard, she was home. She didn't have to go to work that day, and she got to see the show live, and she called in, and it didn't go very well. I thought she was doing a hit-and-run call, what I call a hit-and-run, where someone calls, they say something really quick, and then they hang up before I have a chance to directly engage what they're saying. It turns out that's not what she was doing. She wrote me a very nice letter, which I read on the air last week. She actually went to IPMNation.com. She went to the trouble of going there, getting the contact information for me, and actually sending me in the mail an actual letter. Not an email, but an actual letter in the mail. And I was very honored by that she took the time to do that. And she apologized for her conduct on the air when she called that day. But I felt that I actually owed her an apology because in hindsight, I understand now she was not trying to do a hit-and-run call, and it was a misunderstanding, and, chalk it up to that. And so I felt that I owed her an apology. I should not have jumped to that conclusion. So I wrote back to her. I got the letter on, it was on a Saturday that it showed up in my mailbox, the Saturday after the show. So I immediately wrote back to her and put that in the mail. I figured she'd probably get it Monday or Tuesday. And I did read her letter to me on the air last week. And it was a very nice letter. Like I said, she apologized and she said that she really enjoys the show and that she's a fan and whatnot. So I felt really badly for for the way I treated her on the air. So I wrote back to her and said, well, I appreciate the apology, but I feel that I owe you an apology. You don't owe me an apology. I was the one who was out of line, and I appreciate your being a fan and a supporter of the show, and I hope that you'll continue to do so, etc. Well, yesterday in the mail, I received this, and no, it was not a letter back from Gina. It was actually the letter I wrote to Gina. And, you know that Elvis song, Return to Sender? That's what it says on here. Return to sender attempted, not known, unable to forward. In other words, the address that I sent this to, they were not able to, the post office was not able to deliver the letter. So Gina never got the letter that I sent back to her. I don't know what happened. I used the return address that she had put on the envelope of the letter that she had sent to me, and I double-checked it to make sure I had it right before I mailed it. And the address that I sent this letter to is, and I still have the original letter, it's, I double-checked when I got this in the mail yesterday. It was the correct address. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if Gina suddenly packed up and moved. I don't know if maybe she forgot to include part of the address. Maybe she lives in an apartment building and forgot to include the apartment number. I don't know. But the post office was not able to deliver my letter to Gina. So what I decided to do, and again, Gina, I know you won't see this live because you're probably at work, because you did indicate that you were only home that one day because it snowed that day. But hopefully you'll see this on the replay. I've decided, since the letter was not able to be delivered to Gina, I would read my response to her on the air. So last week, and by the way, if, you know, we archive all the shows on IPMNation.com, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go back to last week. You can hear Gina's letter to me, which I read on the air. But I will now read my letter to Gina. And so Gina, I hope this gets to you this way. And it's relatively brief. This won't take long. Dear Gina, thank you so much for your letter. That was a truly unexpected surprise. I appreciate your apology tremendously, but I also feel that in hindsight, I'm the one who should be sorry. I should not have automatically assumed you were doing the hit and run type of call that I accused you of. And after reading your letter, it's now obvious to me that that was not your intention at all. Chalk it up to a misunderstanding, but again, since I'm the one who jumped to a conclusion and made a false assumption, something that I tend to lecture others about, I'm the one who owes you an apology. Actually, this has taught me something. See, in my everyday life, I'm a nice guy. The version of me that you see when I'm interviewing a guest, polite, deferential, questioning without being overly confrontational, that's my normal demeanor. But what happens when I don't have a guest and I'm left to my own devices is that the alpha side of my personality comes out and I start ranting and raving, practically yelling at the camera at times, etc. People who know me personally find it hilarious to see that side of me, since my passion for certain issues doesn't necessarily jibe with my otherwise chill demeanor. And I think maybe that what I've forgotten in those moments is that if someone is calling my show, I need to treat that individual with the same respect that I treat an in-studio guest. I realize now that the fact is, when a viewer takes the time to call into the show, I need to remember to appreciate that the caller is taking an interest in something that I have to say, whether it's to agree, disagree, or whatever. It's also pretty jerky of me to just assume that everyone understands proper television etiquette or should feel comfortable speaking on the air for an extended period of time. What if the person calling has never called a show before and is unsure about it? For me to make assumptions and call you a coward was disrespectful of me, and I am truly sorry. A coward certainly would not have written me that wonderful and thoughtful letter, that's for certain. I still can't quite get over the fact that you took the time to write me that letter. It blows me away, and I'm really honored that you did. My first instinct was to read it on the show and respond to you that way, which I did end up doing. And I may yet do that, if you don't mind. But I also understand that you don't often get to see the show live, so I decided to write back to you, hence this. Hopefully this gets to you quickly. Of course, it didn't get to her at all. And I also hope that you do continue to be a fan of the show, accept my apology to you, and please, if the opportunity arises again where you can see the show live, please give me a call on the air. Let's be friends. Thanks, Gina. Sincerely, Matt. So that was my letter back to Gina that the post office was unable to deliver. So Gina, if you do see this during one of the replays of the show, that was for you. And I meant it. And I'm sorry that didn't get to you. Like I said, I don't know what happened. Maybe I had the address correct and the post office made a mistake. I don't know. Maybe Gina intentionally wrote the wrong address because she thought I was going to send her, do like a prank and send her a package with a dead fish in it or something. I've heard some horror stories of people doing terrible things like that, but I would never do that. Well, I can't say I would never do that, but I wouldn't do that to Gina. She seems nice. But I have never done that. Let's see. So that takes care of that. I don't have a guest today, so this is going to be one of those rant and rave type of shows. I have something that I want to get off my chest about the role of religion in politics. And those who are familiar with my feelings on this won't be surprised to know that I am very much a separation of church and state guy. And full disclosure, I am not an atheist per se. I should kind of put all the cards on the table before I start. I just want you to know where I'm coming from before I start saying things that are probably going to offend at least 50% of my audience. But I consider myself at this point in my life, I call myself sort of quasi-agnostic. I keep an open mind about everything because I personally have experienced things that of a spiritual nature, I suppose you could say, that I can't fully explain and can't necessarily be explained with science and whatnot. And so I keep an open mind in terms of, there possibly being other planes of existence. Perhaps our consciousness does continue in some way after we leave this plane of existence, etc. Do I believe that there's literally an invisible man in the sky who sort of predetermines everything and makes daily decisions about who goes to heaven, who goes to hell, who wins the World Series, who gets terminal illnesses, who lives to be 100, etc. No, I don't, and I think that's silly, but I keep an open mind, so I'm not an atheist. Actually, by the definition, it depends on how narrow or how broad you want to go with the definition of that word. I suppose my view of looking at it by the definition that some folks would use, some folks would say I am an atheist. Some folks would say, well, it's pretty cut and dry. You either believe in the invisible man in the sky or you don't. And so since as I say, look, if there is such a thing as God, I think it's far more, my concept of what God is or would be is much more complex than anything we can understand. It's there's a thought that, the Bible says God created us in his own image, and I tend to think that may have been written that way because humanity is very comfortable with the idea that actually God is in our image. It allows us to relate to this concept of God, to think of whatever it is you think of when you think of God, some dude on a throne in the sky with a long white beard or whatever it may be. But in my mind, I'm not an atheist because my belief in some level of spiritualism and that level of belief that I have fluctuates constantly. There are some days I really feel like a spiritual being myself, and I feel very connected to that. And there's other days where I just look at it all and go, it's all fake. It's all sort of psychological ways that make us feel about our existence here and help us to psychologically deal with the idea that someday we're not going to be here. Because let's be honest, nobody likes the idea of, you go through life with all this struggle and strife and challenge and whatnot, and then at the end of it, you just cease to exist. That's kind of a crappy deal. Nobody likes that. So it is nice to believe that there is something else. And sometimes I wonder, well, my own sort of spiritualism that I have or have had at times, is that just sort of my own affectation? Is that sort of my own way of psychologically dealing with the idea of potential, eventual, inevitable non-existence? I think about this stuff a lot, probably much more than is healthy, and I wish I could figure out a way to stop thinking about it because I actually don't think it's helpful. I would love to just be a full-on believer. I would love to be a Christian, a full-on committed, I'm going to heaven when I die Christian. I think that would be awesome because it just looks like a lot more fun in some ways, although in some ways not. But, but to be able to believe that, when you get to the end of this existence, it's not really the end. I mean, that's a really, really nice idea. I like that idea quite a bit. So I remain open to it. I'm open to all of it. Maybe there is a deity. Maybe there really is an invisible man in the sky. I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't something else. So I reject the label of atheist, but I'll go with agnostic. Some people have more faith as they get older. I seem to have less. I certainly believed in God when I was a kid. I was raised Catholic and, had to go to church and had to go to Catholic school. And for first grade, I had to go to CCD on Sundays because I didn't go to a Catholic school for first grade. But grade 2 to grade 8, I went to a Catholic school. So I was raised with all that and all the fear and anxiety that comes with it, thinking I'm going to go to hell if, whatever I do wrong. So that's sort of where I am with that. Now, having said all that, I am firmly a separation of church and state guy. And part of it is, while I remain open spiritually, or as open as I can be, I am not a big fan of organized religion. I do not necessarily think, I have some friends who are, I have one particular friend, I typically, when I bring him up on the show, I refer to him as he who shall not be named because he's a very private person, but he and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and he's a full-blown atheist, and he takes a hard line on organized religion. He feels religion in general, any kind of belief such as that, is bad, and it actually does far more harm than good, and that it actually holds us back. It holds us back in terms of science, scientific advancements, and so forth, and other ways. I tend to, however, I don't take the hard line that he does, but I do want religion kept out of politics. I think religion, to me, organized religion is sort of neutral. It's one of those things that it's neither bad nor good. It's what you decide to do with it. Now, some good certainly is done with organized religion. For example, organized religion is responsible for a lot of the charity in this country. A lot of charitable organizations are religious-based organizations, and that's wonderful. So that's a good thing, and they provide a sense of community for a lot of people, and there's a lot of good things that come from organized religion. Here's what I think is the bad that comes with organized religion. I think that organized religion itself, and this isn't an original idea, I know a lot of people feel this way, but I'm going to try to articulate it as best I can. I feel organized religion itself has very little to do with God, and it's really political. It is a political ideology. Because, well, a few reasons. First of all, in terms of belief systems, most people who believe in a particular organized religion, why do they believe? If you're a religious person, why do you tend to believe whatever belief system, whatever ideology, whatever religion it is that you've chosen? Why do you believe in that particular religion? For most people, not for everyone. Some people convert, or some people are completely non-religious and then they pick a religion, or some people are religious and then they decide that they no longer believe and they leave it. But most people who do believe, most people, not all, who do believe in a particular religion and who buy into the concept that whatever particular religion it is that you believe in, that is the one true religion, and that is the one true path to heaven, and all that goes with it, and the idea that what we believe in our religion is correct, and all the other religions, all the other belief systems are wrong, and that we're the ones who are right. Why do you believe that? For most people, it's because that is what they are born into. That is literally the only reason they are convinced that what we believe is the one true religion, because that's what you're born into. I was raised Catholic, so in theory, I am supposed to believe by default. I choose to think for myself, but were I to stick with that, I should in theory believe that Catholicism is the one true path to heaven, because that's what mommy and daddy told me from the time I was born. We're right as Catholics, and everyone else is wrong. We're going to heaven, and everyone else, well, they're not necessarily going to hell. That's up to God in theory, but, good luck to them. But we're okay, because we believe in the right, we believe in the correct belief system. It's a weird reason to believe something, in my view. To believe in something as important as your choice of spirituality, specifically only because that's what you're born into. That's what mommy and daddy told you was the truth from the moment that you entered into the world. I think that's a really strange reason to believe in something. I also, another problem that I have with organized religion itself is this idea, it's really pretty arrogant, actually, if you think about it, to believe that whatever religion, whatever belief system you happen to buy into, that you're right. But another thing that's sort of part and parcel to that is if you buy into that part of it, and not everyone does. Some people take the attitude that, well, there's more than one path to heaven. Some people believe that. Of course, the Christian response to that is, well, if there is more than one path to heaven, then why did Christ die on the cross for us? If there's more than one true path to heaven and we have to regard them all as valid, that doesn't make sense, which is a valid point from a Christian point of view. But of course, the very story of Christ is not an original one. That story predates Christianity. There are other religions that predate Christianity where there was they have a similar story. The deity who sends his only son to earth to be nailed to a tree so that, I don't know, you can get a free pony or whatever it's supposed to. I'm sorry, so that everyone can get into heaven. That's not even an original story. Maybe it's true. Again, I'm not an atheist, but that is not an original story. But the other thing about organized religion, one of the things about organized religion that has never made sense to me is, if you don't believe in this sort of Unitarian Universalist idea that everyone goes to heaven, you just have to believe on some level in some way, well, what about all the people, let's say, for example, that only Episcopalians, let's assume for a moment that Episcopalians are the ones who have it right. They're the ones who got it right. That's the one true religion. And everyone else is screwed. Well, what happens, all the people around the world, Catholics, Muslims, Congregationists, whomever, Hindus, all the people who have never been exposed to Episcopalianism, how does it make any logical sense that they would all end up in hell? Or for that matter, anyone who's simply a non-Christian, who perhaps has never heard the word of God, who perhaps doesn't even know the story of Christ, perhaps someone who lives in Africa, who doesn't know anything about Christianity, has never even been exposed to it. They're damned to hell for not accepting Christ as their Lord and Savior when they've never even had the opportunity to do so. It makes no logical sense. This loving God would just send people to hell for no fault of their own? You can't, 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 you can't You can't buy a product if you don't even know it's available. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Logically, it makes no sense. By the way, Pope Francis, and I've jettisoned myself from Catholicism, but I'm kind of digging this Pope Francis in some ways. And one of the things that he said, which caused quite a stir, and he's made several controversial statements, but he said something that actually addresses the issue that I just raised when he said, even atheists are redeemed for their good works. In other words, you can be an atheist, and if you're a good person, if you're a fundamentally moral and ethical person, and you do good things, you still have the opportunity to get to heaven. And I thought that was a very courageous thing for him to say, because it certainly ruffled a lot of feathers, but also it just makes sense logically. What if there's just something about how maybe you have been exposed to Christianity, but there's just something in your brain, there's just something about how you are mentally wired where you just don't buy into any of it, but you're still a good person. Of course, some Christians say that, well, you can't be an atheist and still be a good person. I flatly reject that. I've known plenty of atheists and agnostics who I think are fundamentally good, moral, ethical people who just happen to not believe in God. I do not believe that you have to be a Christian to be a good person. I reject that. I find it almost offensive, that assertion. I think that religion, to a large extent, is used to control people. Not always an entirely bad thing, in the sense that, and this is, again, why I don't take as hard a line as my atheist friend, he who shall not be named, takes on it. Maybe we need religion to control some people. Stephen James Blake, who used to have a show on IPMNation.com, he passed away a couple of years ago, but very, very smart guy. And he wasn't particularly a believer, but his attitude was, hey, if believing in God keeps you from raping and killing and stealing and whatnot, then go ahead and keep on believing. So maybe there is some value in that, in believing. But then again, I would have to question, well, are you truly a good and ethical and moral person if the only reason you don't do bad things is because you're afraid of going to hell? If that is upon what your moral compass is based, is fear of eternal damnation, and not simply because you care about people and you love people and don't want to hurt them, then that gets complicated, because then a Christian would say, well, that fear and all that comes from having a conscience, and your conscience is given to you by God. And so I don't want to get too far into the weeds with that. But I think organized religion is largely political. Not only is it used as a means to control people, but it's used to sort of reinforce pre-existing political narratives. And this is why, now we're getting to why I so firmly object to religion being used in terms of how our government is run, in terms of how we create legislation, because I think that people who call themselves Christians, a lot of people use Christianity to sort of as a means of sort of reinforcing what I think are some pretty negative and unhelpful attitudes and stereotypes. And for example, of course, a lot of Christians, not all Christians to their credit, and not all Christian conservatives even, but a lot of Christian conservatives believe that we can't have gay marriage because it legitimizes homosexuality, and homosexuality is a lifestyle choice, and people who are gay, they're committing an abomination, a sin. And I think that's very dangerous. What is frustrating to me about conservative Christians is a lot of them, not all, and I'm trying to be disciplined about not even saying most, although I'm very tempted to say most, but a lot of them practice something that and regular viewers have heard me use this term a lot. It's a phrase I coined myself. They practice what I call ironic Christianity. They're ironic Christians. And an ironic Christian is someone who calls him or herself a Christian and goes through the motions of being a Christian, goes to church and everything, and makes sure to be adequately freaked out by homosexuality and all that, all the things that they think good Christians are supposed to do, but actively have as little to do as possible with what Christ actually tried to teach us. See, the version of Christ that I learned about being raised Catholic was that he was into taking care of people, looking out for people, feeding the hungry, clothing people. I've heard Christ referred to, and of course, conservatives will be horrified by this, but I've heard Christ referred to as the original socialist, because Christ believed in taking care of people and helping people and not kicking people when they're down. But these are ideas that are largely rejected by conservative Christians. By the way, please don't misunderstand, I'm not advocating for socialism. I do believe in helping people and people taking care of each other, but I'm not advocating for socialism. It doesn't, that's not where I'm coming from politically. I'm very centrist and I am a capitalist. So, but Christ was very into not hating people, and people taking care of each other. And I feel like ironic Christians love to do the very things that Christ said not to do. They love to judge. They tend to have no empathy or sympathy for poor people. For example, a lot of conservative Christian voters don't believe that we should have a social safety net. They think that anyone who benefits in any way from any sort of government program is a leech and a loser, and they're intentionally bilking the system. I'm not saying there aren't things like welfare fraud and things like that, but a lot of conservative Christians seem to have this attitude that they're all bilking the system and that there should be no social safety net, there should be no unemployment insurance, etc. In other words, we shouldn't take care of people. We shouldn't help people out who need a leg up, even in a very tough economy. Screw them. And an example of this, actually a glaring example of this, is you see in the Republican Party, there's been a movement over the past year. In fact, I don't know what ended up happening to it here in New Hampshire. I think it didn't get very far. But Republicans in many states across the country have been very excited about enacting legislation to drug test welfare recipients. And the logic is, if people who are collecting welfare, or I think in some states they included unemployment with this too, if people are collecting, then they should be tested for drugs. But there's a problem with this whole thing, and we have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
You're on the air. Oh, you got to turn down your TV.
Yeah, I got it on.
We got to turn it down.
Okay.
Because we're on a delay. Hello?
Well, I'm waiting for him to stop talking.
You got to turn it down and listen to me through the phone because we're on a delay.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, I'm waiting for.
Okay. I'm sorry. I can't spend the entire second half of the show trying to explain this to someone. Where was I? So there's this movement that Republicans have been very excited about across the country to drug test welfare recipients. And the idea, again, being that if you're benefiting somehow from a public assistance program, that we need to make sure that you're not taking that money and spending it all on drugs. Part of this, of course, is the result of a stereotype that conservatives push that not only are people who benefit from public assistance in any way, leeches, if it's probably her again, I'm not going to answer it. Not only are these people all leeches and losers and bad Americans and they're stealing from us, but they're also living very lavish lifestyles, because if you're on public assistance, you just get so much money that you can pay your rent and pay for your Lamborghini you're driving around in and pay for your swimming pool and still have plenty of money left over to buy lots of drugs. Anyone who's ever lived on any kind of public assistance will tell you that it's actually very, very difficult to get by on such a meager amount of money. But the other thing is, it's this attitude of demonizing poor people, and it actually, in every state that it's been tried, it actually ends up wasting so much more money than it does saving money, because it turns out an infinitesimal number of people are actually who are on public assistance are actually using any kind of drugs. They can't even afford drugs. And Pat's on the line. Hi, Pat. Welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Hello?
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Pat. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you been?
Good, good. What you got for us?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to you, and there's so many things I agree with you on. I, too, was born Catholic, raised Catholic, but am not a Catholic anymore.
Yeah.
No, I don't practice the faith anymore. There's just been too many things going on that I can't reconcile with. And
Yeah.
I think, if you look back through the ages, there's been more abominations that were created and carried out with the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Inquisition, you can look at a number of different things and say, whoa, how does that happen when there is a just God? How does he let that happen to people who are in charge but are abusing their power in the name of God?
Oh, yeah.
And that make I was a history major, and I just all through what I read, and I'm saying, I don't get it. And the second thing is, Christ was a poor person.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have any trappings of a king or God. And when you look at the Vatican,
yeah.
Isn't that a great example of poverty?
What would he think if he saw that? What would Christ think if he came back today and saw the Vatican?
It's a joke. It really is. And then they turn
incredible.
around and they beg for money from the Catholics in their individual churches, their parishes, to feed the poor and house the poor. And here you have, a pope walking around in designer slippers. And, that to me is not sending the right message to the flock,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I got fed up with it. I just did. And, of course, with all the abuse that came out.
Oh, yeah.
And moving priests around. And
it's like the mob, the way they protect these people.
They do. You're exactly right. They protect them. And not only do they protect them, but they put them in another position where they can repeat the offense that they already did.
Exactly.
And there's just so many things that I'm saying. I'm an agnostic, I guess you could say that. Because, I don't know whether there's a power out there. But as far as burning in hell, you want to look at hell, just come to Earth,
We create our own hell. Absolutely,
yeah,
I agree.
I think if there is one, we are in it. But I feel bad that I don't have the faith that I was taught. My mother is a staunch Catholic. My father was a staunch Catholic.
Yeah.
But my brother and I my brother, don't get him on the Pope. He'd be for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But we've just, I think intelligence has a lot to do with that when you start trying to figure it out. Have you ever listened to Bill Maher?
Oh, I love Bill Maher, and I love Religulous. That's a great movie.
Oh, I've watched that so many times. There's so much truth in that movie.
Yeah.
And, of course, he does it with a very cynical, humorous way, but, I just listened to him, and I said, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with him.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
I'm sure he's got a lot of things to say that, he wouldn't be able to say publicly or in his records or his performances.
Sure.
But I'm right where you are, Matt, and I
Yeah.
just, every time I see the gold in the churches and the stained glass windows that the parishioners were supposed to, pledge so many hundreds of dollars, and I'm saying, what? A stained glass window when you can feed so many people with all this money?
Yes.
Why do you need that in a church that is perfectly fine the way it is?
Exactly.
And I just every time I think about the different things, I'm saying, my God, you held on to your faith longer than you should have, because I was out of state and I was going to church even though my mother's wasn't watching over me, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
And I found the same thing. I was in Virginia, and I'm saying, one Sunday, honest to God, this priest was giving the sermon, and at the end he said, now, as a good Catholic, now Washington area is a pretty big place. They have a lot of apartment buildings and condos, and at least when I was there.
Yeah.
And he said, as a good Catholic, you should go and knock on your neighbor's doors. Well, I lived in a 15-story building, and I'm saying to myself, first of all, I was only 23 years old.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, are you nuts? I, as a young 23-year-old woman, is going to knock on a stranger's door and ask them to give money to the church?
Wow.
That's if I managed to get that out before I was grabbed and strangled,
Yeah.
So in that, I walked out and I never went back.
Yeah.
These guys, first of all, they don't live in reality.
Yeah.
They don't. So, the divorce thing, for a long time, you could not receive the sacraments. You could go to church, but you could not receive communion. My aunt and uncle, back in the 40s, around 44, 45, my aunt, who was a staunch Catholic, was engaged to a Protestant, a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And because she was, of course, you had to take a vow that you would raise the children Catholic. Otherwise,
Okay.
they wouldn't even listen to you. And she couldn't have a wedding. She could get married in the sacristy, in the back.
Oh, okay.
He was a non-Catholic, so I guess non-Catholics can't appear in the front of the altar. I don't know. But for a long time, that went on.
Yeah.
They eased up, and now you can marry under certain circumstances.
Yeah, they've liberalized a lot of that. Yeah.
And
They've liberalized a lot of that over the years. Yeah.
Well, I have to laugh. Annulments. That's another thing. It's a Catholic divorce. But if you get an annulment, you're okay. If you marry and don't get an annulment, you're damned. Okay?
Right. Because Pat, if there is a God, he's very concerned with all these technicalities of divorces and annulments and all of that.
I'm sure it's taking up a lot of his time.
I'm sure that's of great concern to him. Yes.
But that's my whole point.
Yeah.
I don't see, going up as one of the comedians. That wasn't Bill Maher, but after you die, you're going to go up with the angels and all this. And I'm saying, oh, my God, if you had... The other thing is, too, we're supposed to be able to have free will, right?
Yeah.
I'm right about that, right?
Right.
And if you have free will, I have the free will not to believe what I'm being taught.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
But I'll go to hell for it.
And if there, if there is a God and he doesn't want us to question anything, then why did he give us, if he created us, why did he create us with the intellect to question things?
That's the whole thing. It's I don't know. It gets frustrating, and I just, I wish I could believe, and I can't. But I won't take up any more time, but I agree with you 100%, and maybe you can get Bill Maher on as a guest.
Oh, that would be amazing. I'll try. You know what?
I'll pray that one, huh?
I'll pray for it, Pat. That's what I'll do.
Yes. Well, you should get down on your hands and knees, and during Lent, give up everything possible that you like.
That's right. Pat, thank you so much for calling.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye,
You too.
Matt.
Bye-bye. That was Pat. Of course, Pat sometimes calls us on Norm and Friends as well, but that's, I believe, the first time she's ever called this show. So thank you, Pat, for calling. That was a great call. Just finishing up my thought on the drug testing welfare recipients. So Republicans get very excited about this idea of drug testing welfare recipients, but in every single state that has been tried thus far, it has been an epic failure. Because what has happened is drug testing is very expensive. I used to have a job where we would have to send new employees. I had to do some hiring where I used to work, and we'd have to send prospective new employees to go get a drug test before we could give them a job. And it's so I know firsthand it's very expensive to drug test. And what ended up happening was these states where they've tried it. It was such a tiny percentage of people who they were able to successfully kick off the welfare rolls because they tested positive for drugs that they ended up spending just exponentially, just way more money on administering this program than they saved. And yet, no matter how many states they do this in, and it ends up wasting a ton of money, there's always another state the next week where the Republicans there are like, yeah, we got to do this welfare drug testing. We'll get those damn dirty welfare recipients. And it's an epic failure. And it flies in the face of two alleged conservative principles, right? Number one, you don't waste money, you save money, because conservatives are, fiscal conservatives. You don't want to spend money you don't have to. And it costs a lot of money for this drug testing. And two, conservatives are supposed to be about small government, limited government, shrinking the size of government. Well, adding this drug testing component to the welfare system, you're increasing bureaucracy. You're adding to the government. You're adding more bureaucracy. And I thought conservatives were supposed to be against that. But these people, they get so, it's almost like a bloodlust. They're so excited for the opportunity to kick poor people when they're down that they're like, well, that's okay if it wastes a ton of money and it expands government. It's a chance to kick these welfare recipients right in the face. And, well, we just can't help ourselves because we're Republicans and we love that stuff. I mean, it's incredible. And no matter how many states it goes badly in, there's another state that wants to do it. It's amazing. I would not be surprised if it gets to a point where at least half the states in the country have tried. I think we're up to 12 or 13 states now that have tried this consistently failed policy, but they get really excited about it. We saw that here in New Hampshire. I remember seeing online Janine Nodder, who I've only met Janine once. She was on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades once, but I saw I think we're Facebook friends, maybe, or I saw something she had posted somewhere, all excited about drug testing welfare recipients. And it's like, why is it so important to hurt poor people? I understand that, conservatives aren't big on things like sympathy and empathy and all that, but when it gets to the point where, you feel like you have to go out of your way to hurt people, I don't know if Christ would approve of that. And again, that goes back to this practice of what I call ironic Christianity, where, it's going through the motions of it, but having as little to do with possible with anything that Christ said. And we have another call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, Matt, Norm.
Hey, Norm.
I got a question on that. I love that subject. Do they test these people who are drinking alcohol? Because isn't alcohol a drug? And if they're going to test people for, we'll say, smoking marijuana or whatever, then they should test the people that are drinking alcohol, because that is a test. That is a drug as well. Okay? That's my feelings on it. What do you think?
Well,
we'll continue this at 4.
Oh, okay. Sounds good, Norm. All right, I'll see you then.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, I don't think they should be testing anybody because it's all a waste of money. Alcohol too. I mean, alcohol is legal, and I think the idea is that because conservatives also tend to be the ones. Again, they're the ones who get excited about the drug testing. They're also the ones who are generally freaked out at the idea of legalizing marijuana, because they think if you start legalizing or decriminalizing that I don't know, everyone's going to be walking around stoned or something. Pat brought up something too I want to piggyback on. We have a little bit of time left. Pat mentioned, talking about the Vatican and the opulence of it and all the pageantry and, the Pope and his clothes and everything. And there's a museum in Kentucky called the Creation Museum. It cost $27 million to build this museum for creationists. I wonder how many people they could feed with that $27 million. But of course, that's never the priority. We have another call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this? Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, Matt?
Yep, you're on the air. Who's this?
Okay. Oh, Esther.
Esther, welcome to the show. What you got?
I agree with you so much on everything. I can't believe this. The first time I've tuned in to this time show here.
Oh.
And my thing is with these people, Christian and people who believe in God, one of the first things as a Catholic, they'll say, well, who made you? And you say, well, God made me. Then the next question is, for me, is who made the gays? Let them wonder about that. Okay.
That's
a big show.
A valid point. Esther, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, the thing with the gay thing is, again, and that's a good point, Esther. Christians, the way they get around that is, well, we're all sinners, and they believe that being gay is a sin. So people being gay, from their perspective, is just another way that people are sinners. I don't believe that being gay is a sin. Nor do I believe that anyone chooses to be gay. And there's two reasons why I believe that people are born gay and don't choose it. Number one, I didn't choose my sexuality. I didn't choose to be straight. I don't at any point remember during my development, which way do I want to go? Do I like girls or do I like dudes? I was just naturally attracted to women. If I didn't choose my sexuality, why would I presume that a gay person chooses theirs? Number one. And the other reason I believe people are born with whatever sexuality they have is that that's what gay people claim, and I figure they're the experts. I'm not gay, I've never been gay, so I don't know how it works. But so if a gay person says to me, well, I didn't choose this is how I was born, I will tend to believe them because they should know. They're the ones who are gay. I've never, ever, ever in my life heard a gay person say, I could be straight if I wanted to. I just decide to be gay. I somehow managed to force myself to be attracted to my own gender. Come on. But something that as always, I ramble and I don't get to everything I want to get to, but one of the other reasons why I have such a problem with these belief systems is the whole gay thing comes from, I don't know what book it is. I don't remember. There's an obscure, it's mentioned once in the entire Bible. Christ never addresses it. It's not mentioned in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not be gay. But there's some obscure passage somewhere in the Old Testament about man shall not lay with another man. If you look, there's all kinds of stuff in the Bible that you can interpret all kinds of ways. You can use to sort of prop up and reinforce whatever crazy ideas you want to reinforce. I mean, I have one here. Here, we'll go through these quickly because I think these are fun. This is from a website called ChristianityDisproved.com. And it's the article is called Top 10 Obsolete Bible Verses. Let's just go through these quickly because I think these, we can put these in the same sort of category as the alleged anti-gay line that's in the Bible. These are from 10 down to number 1. These are in a countdown format. So number 10, kill blasphemers. Leviticus 24:16 says, "One who blasphemes the name of the Lord shall be put to death. The whole congregation shall stone the blasphemer. Aliens as well as citizens, when they blaspheme the name, shall be put to death." So according to that, we should kill anyone who blasphemes. So, number 9, kill adulterers. This is from Leviticus 20:10. "If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death." No wonder Christians are so pro-death penalty, many of them, even though one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill. Apparently, there's other parts of the Bible where it's all about killing people who you judge to have done something wrong. Number 8, kill female sorcerers. According to Exodus 22:18, "You shall not allow a woman to live who practices sorcery." Number 7, kill rude children. According to Leviticus 29, "Anyone who dishonors father or mother must be put to death. Such a person is guilty of a capital offense." That's why when I was a kid, at the end of dinner, I would always ask, "May I be excused from the table?" Because I didn't want my parents to kill me. Remember, I was raised Catholic. Number 6, kill people. Again, see, I'm getting the death penalty thing now. This is why they love killing. Number 6, kill people that work on Saturday. According to Exodus 35:2, "You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day must be a Sabbath day of complete rest, a holy day dedicated to the Lord. Anyone who works on that day must be put to death." We got to start executing people who work on Saturdays. Sorry if you have a job where you got to work Saturdays, but the Bible says it, so we're going to have to round you up and kill you. I won't read the rest of these. I'll just give you, really quick, because these are fun. Number 5, kill women who have sex before marriage. I'll just read you the summaries. Number 4, no birth control. Again, Christians, they want to outlaw birth control. Number 3, slavery is okay, according to Leviticus 25:44. See, that explains why some conservatives aren't so thrilled with that whole Civil Rights Act. Again, it's starting to make sense. Number 2, women are inferior to men. Number 1, and of course, number 1, kill homosexuals. According to Leviticus 20:13, "If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall be put to death. Their blood is upon them." So actually, not only, according to the Bible, not only is it really important for the future of the sacrament of marriage and for the future of the United States and the American family to not let gay people marry each other, we must kill them. It's in the Bible. Anywho, so that'll do it for this week's Matt Connarton Unleashed television edition. Thank you to everybody who called today. Pat, Esther, the woman who couldn't quite figure it out. Thanks for trying. Don't forget, tomorrow night, every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Dr. Kevin Radio Network, the radio edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed. You can also get that through IPMNation.com. It's Wednesday, you know the drill. I'll be back at 4 with Norm and at 6 with Gary. That's it. Talk at y'all later. Thanks, everybody.